On the 20 slides shown below, I present the original photographs of the Second World War from the German archive, which are in my collection. These photos are from my collection department, Wehrmacht on the Eastern and Western Fronts. If you like it, subscribe to my YouTube, like it, so you don't miss the new weekly presentations. If you would like to order 5 inches by 7 inches copies of these photos from the original, you can specify which photos you would like to receive. Laboratory quality. Enjoy your viewing.
The German Afrika Korps German, Deutsches Afrikakorps, DAK, commonly known as Afrika Korps, was the German expeditionary force in Africa during the North African campaign of World War II. First sent as a holding force to shore up the Italian defense of its African colonies, the formation fought on in Africa, under various appellations, from March 1941 until its surrender in May 1943. The unit's best-known commander was Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. When Rommel was promoted to the newly formed Panzer Army Africa, his command included a number of Italian units, including 4 infantry divisions. 2 Italian armored divisions, Ariete and Trieste, initially remained under Italian control as the Italian XX Motorized Corps under the command of General Gastone Gambara. The Afrika Korps was restructured and renamed in August 1941. Afrika Korps was the official name of the force for less than 6 months, but the officers and men used it for the duration. The Afrika Korps was the major German component of Panzerarmee Afrika, which was later renamed the Deutsche Italienische Panzerarmee and finally renamed Heeresgruppe Afrika Army Group Africa during the 27 months of the Desert Campaign. Commanders: Erwin Rommel, February 6, 1941, August 1941. Ludwig Kröll, August 1941 to May 1942. Kröll landed near British troops on May 29 and was taken prisoner. Walther Nering, May 1942 to September 1942. Wilhelm Ritter von Thoma, September 1942 to November 1942. Fritz Bayerlein, November 1942. Gustav Fenn, November 1942 to January 1943. Kurt Freiherr von Liebenstein, January 1943 to February 1943. Karl Bulowius, February 1943. Heinz Ziegler, February, March 1943. Hans Kramer, March 1943 surrender. The Afrika Korps formed on January 11, 1941, and one of Adolf Hitler's favorite generals, Erwin Rommel, was designated as commander on February 11. Originally Hans von Funk was to have commanded it, but Hitler loathed von Funk, as he had been a personal staff officer of Werner von Fritsch until von Fritsch was dismissed in 1938. The German Armed Forces High Command Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, OKW, had decided to send a blocking force to Italian Libya to support the Italian army. The Italian 10th Army had been routed by the British Commonwealth Western Desert Force in Operation Compass December 9, 1940 to 9 February 1941 and captured at the Battle of Beta Fam. The German blocking force, commanded by Rommel, at first consisted of a force based only on Panzer Regiment 5, which was put together from the 2nd Regiment of the 3rd Panzer Division. These elements were organized into the 5th Light Division when they arrived in Africa from February 10, March 12, 1941. In late April and into May, the 5th Light Division was joined by elements of 15th Panzer Division, transferred from Italy. At this time, the Afrika Korps consisted of the 2 divisions, and was subordinated to the Italian chain of command in Africa. On August 15, 1941, the German 5th Light Division was redesignated 21st Panzer Division, the higher formation of which was still the Afrika Korps. During the summer of 1941, the OKW increased the presence in Africa and created a new headquarters called Panzer Group Africa. On August 15, the Panzer Group was activated with Rommel in command, and command of the Afrika Korps was turned over to Ludwig Kröll. The Panzer Group comprised the Afrika Korps, with some additional German units now in North Africa, plus 2 corps of Italian units. The Panzer Group was, in turn, redesignated as Panzer Army Africa on January 30, 1942. After the German and Italian defeat in the Second Battle of El Alamein and the Allied landings in Morocco and Algeria Operation Torch, the OKW once more upgraded the presence in Africa by adding first the XC Army Corps, under Walter Nering, in Tunisia on November 19, 1942, then an additional 5th Panzer Army on December 8, under the command of Colonel General Hans-Jürgen von Arnim. On February 23, 1943, the original Panzer Army Africa, which had since been restyled as the German-Italian Panzer Army, was now redesignated as the Italian First Army and put under the command of Italian General Giovanni Mess. Rommel, meanwhile, was placed in command of a new Army Group Africa, created to control both the Italian First Army and the 5th Panzer Army. The remnants of the Afrika Korps and surviving units of the 1st Italian Army retreated into Tunisia. Command of the Army Group was turned over to Arnim in March. On May 13, the Afrika Korps surrendered, along with all other remaining Axis forces in North Africa. Most Afrika Korps prisoners of war POW were transported to the United States and held in Camp Shelby in Mississippi, Camp Hearn in Texas and other POW camps until the end of the war. Jagdgeschwader 27 JG-27 Africa was a fighter wing of the Luftwaffe during World War II. The wing was given the name Afrika for serving in the North African campaign predominantly alone in the period from April 1941 to September 1942. Elements of JG-27 fought in every major theater of operations in which the Wehrmacht operated. Stab JG-27 was created in October 1939 and assigned 2 Gruppen groups in the Phoney War. The wing's first campaign was Fall Gelb, the battles of the Low Countries in France. In the second half of 1940 JG-27 received a 3rd Gruppe and fought in the Battle of Britain. In 1941 it returned to Germany, then fought in the German invasion of Yugoslavia and Battle of Greece in April 1941. The wing was then separated with 2 Gruppen sent to support Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941. I Gruppe was sent to Italian Libya beginning JG-27's North African campaign from mid-April 1941. It was joined by 2 Gruppe, which was withdrawn from the Eastern Front after less than 2 weeks and transferred to Africa. 3 Gruppe joined the other Gruppen in North Africa in late 1941. JG-27 fought as a complete wing in Africa and Battle of the Mediterranean, supporting the Siege of Malta, until December 1942. I Gruppe returned to France and spent the rest of the war serving in the defense of the Reich, Channel Front, and Western Front theaters. 3 and the newly created 4 Gruppe remained operating in Yugoslavia and Greece until March 1944. In the final year of the war, JG-27 fought the Normandy landings in June 1944 and supported the last major German offensive in the West in December. As the Ardennes offensive failed, it took part in the disastrous Operation Bodenplatte on January 1, 1945. For the remaining months of the war it separated again, with elements surrendering to the British in northern Germany while the bulk surrendered to the Americans in Austria, on May 8, 1945. Crusader, in full, tank, cruiser Mk6, Crusader, also known by its General Staff number 8.15, was one of the primary British cruiser tanks during the early part of the Second World War. Over 5,000 tanks were manufactured and they made important contributions to the British victories during the North African campaign. The Crusader tank would not see active service beyond Africa, but the chassis of the tank was modified to create anti-aircraft, fire support, observation, communication, bulldozer, and recovery vehicle variants. The first Crusader Mark I tanks entered service in 1941 and though maneuverable, they were relatively lightly armored and underarmed. The following Crusader Mark II had a maximum armor of 49 mm 1.9 in. The main armament for the Crusader Mark I and TUS was a 40 mm Ordnance QF 2-pounder gun. The following Crusader Mark III was fitted with a 57 mm Ordnance QF 6-pounder gun at the expense of one member of the crew in the turret. This variant was more than a match for the mid-generation German Panzer III and Panzer IV medium tanks that it faced in combat. As part of the 1st Armored Brigade, the Crusader was to prove vital during the Second Battle of El Alamein, at the Siege of Tobruk and in the Tunisia campaign. Retained in service because of delays with its replacement, by late 1942, the lack of armament upgrades, plus reliability problems due to the harsh desert conditions and the appearance of upper-moored and upgunned German tanks in the Afrika Korps, saw the Crusader replaced as the main tank by US-supplied M3 Grant and then by the M4 Sherman medium tanks, but it was retained in combat use until the end of the war in North Africa and after that for training in Britain. The Volkswagen Type 82 Kübelwagen, or simply Kübel, contractions of the original German word Kübelsitzwagen translated, bucket seat car, but when the contractions are translated literally a back formation of bucket or tub car results, is a military light utility vehicle designed by Ferdinand Porsche and built by Volkswagen during World War II for use by the Nazi German military, both Wehrmacht and Waffen-SS. Based heavily on the Volkswagen Beetle, it was prototyped and first deployed in Poland as the Type 62, but following improvements entered full-scale production as the Type 82. Several derivative models, such as the Commander's Wagen, were also built in hundreds, or in dozens. Although Adolf Hitler had discussed the possibility of military application of the Volkswagen with Ferdinand Porsche as early as April 1934, it was not until January 1938 that high-ranking Heereswaffenamt officials formally approached Porsche about designing an expensive, lightweight military transport vehicle that could operate reliably both on and off-road, in even the most extreme conditions. Kübelwagen is a contraction of Kübelsitzwagen, meaning bucket seat car. Before the war, this term became popular in Germany for light open-topped cross-country and military field cars without doors, because these were typically equipped with bucket seats to help keep occupants on board, necessary in an era before the adoption of seatbelts. This body style had first been developed by Karosseriefabrikant Trutz in 1923. 78 The first Porsche Type 62 test vehicles had no doors and were therefore fitted with bucket seats as Kübelsitzwagen, later shortened to Kübelwagen. 136 Despite later acquiring doors and more regular, lower seats, the name Kübelwagen was retained. Besides the Volkswagen plant, Mercedes-Benz, Opel, and Tatra also built Kübelsitzwagen, though they were all rear-wheel drive models only. Full-scale production of the Type 82 Kübelwagen started in February 1940, as soon as the VW factories had become operational. Northwest major changes took place before production ended in 1945, only small modifications were implemented, mostly eliminating unnecessary parts and reinforcing others which had proved unequal to the task. Prototype versions were assembled with four-wheel drive Type 86 and different engines, but none offered a significant increase in performance or capability over the existing Type 82, so these designs went nowhere. As of March 1943, the car received a revised dash and the bigger 1,131 cubic centimeters engine, developed for the Schwimmwagen, that produced more torque and power than the original 985 cubic centimeters unit. Power of the original 1-liter engine is 23.5 PS 17.3 kilowatts, 23.2 horsepower, while the larger 1.1-liter unit offered 25 PS 18.4 kilowatts, 24.7 horsepower. When Volkswagen production ceased at the end of the war, 50,435 Kübelwagen vehicles had been produced, and the vehicle had proven to be surprisingly useful, reliable, and durable.